Okay, so good morning. I'm Matt Nelson. I'm the Coordinator and Community Engagement Manager for It Takes a City. We're a charity based in Cambridge. Essentially, we look to bring people together to discuss areas of specific interest to particular groups within the homelessness sector. And also we provide some services now. Since COVID started, we actually started to provide some services. For a variety of reasons, people become homeless. I mean, my own story, domestic violence when I was 15 meant that I had to leave home very, very quickly, literally the bag of clothes in my back and get my mum out. I then spent 3 years sofa surfing. And then again in my 20s, I had a conventional life, I had a partner, I had a rented property, and then relationship breakdown and losing my property, I was homeless again. So that's me, but people can become homeless through domestic violence, through substance misuse. We have a lot of ex-veterans from the forces who become homeless. So there's a whole variety of reasons, and everybody's story is unique. Okay, so you may have seen people rough sleeping, street homeless. They've been around for many, many years. But what we found during the COVID pandemic, the government brought in a policy called Everybody In, which essentially we were given money, local authorities were given money to get people safe in a COVID-safe environment. And what we found from that was what had been suspected for a number of years, that street homelessness is literally just the tip of the iceberg. Like myself, I was sofa surfing, so I was part of the hidden homeless. And in particular, we found that a lot of women and younger people started to turn up at the hostel provision that was laid on for them. Because obviously during the pandemic, people weren't allowed to stay in mixed households. So the situation is, that tip of the iceberg is just the one that you'll see in the city centre, but outside of the city centre and in surrounding towns and villages, there are many, many people who are homeless but hidden. Unhelpful language are some of the common terms you may have heard: druggie, alkie, tramp, dosser. They're not helpful. They set the tone for a lot of people, and that's what we're here today to try and dispel. So it would really help if people showed empathy, if they stop for a moment and think about their own situation. They may feel that they're safe, they're comfortable, they're secure, but life can bowl you a curveball very, very quickly. So it's about showing empathy, and it's about getting yourself up to speed and informed about homelessness, and really to tackle those misconceptions. So those kind of labels and tags are really not helpful to anyone. So, I mean, appropriate terms would be, if that person is homeless, to refer to them as homeless. I refer to them as my homeless neighbours, because they are our neighbours. They live alongside us, albeit not in a house. So refer to them as homeless people. Refer to them as human beings. But that's all about getting to know what is appropriate and what isn't. So essentially just remember that they are human beings and treat them like that. Okay, well, the do's, first of all, the simplest do is to say hello, to acknowledge that person as another human being. They may well see, if they're in the town centre, they may well see hundreds of people walk past them every day and ignore them. Just some human contact and interaction can actually lift that person's day. Do think about ways that you can help them in terms of, we'll talk a bit later about street link, street support and street aid. We would advise in the initial instance not to give money to people. Again, we can talk about that later. But the first thing is to acknowledge that person, okay? Don't show aggression towards them, don't ignore them. Okay, so there are some practical steps. I mentioned earlier on, there are 3 streets to help the homeless is the phrase that we're using. So the first one is, if you see somebody rough sleeping, you may have interacted with them, you may not, but the quickest and simplest thing to do is to use Street Link. Street Link is a very simple 4-stage process. You open the app, open the website, and then it just asks you some simple questions. Where is that person? Give the information you can. What does that person look like? And then that will be pinged off to the street support team in Cambridge, and they will pick it up from there. And we would rather people over-report. So we'd rather 10 people report that person using Street Link than assuming that somebody else has. In terms of how you can support them, there's a site called Street Support. Now that contains 2 important sections. The first one is how you can get help. So again, if you feel comfortable and safe sitting next to that homeless person, spending some time with them, then StreetLink can find them accommodation, it can find them food, personal items, whatever it is, you can get help there. But also if you're thinking of volunteering and offering support. Again, the Street Support website will give you all those opportunities. So all of the homeless groups, charities, church groups, whatever they are within the city, will have asks on that website. We need you to volunteer to do X, Y, and Z. And the last one, we may talk again about whether or not you should give money to homeless people. We would advise you not to do that. We may talk about begging, but we'd advise you not to give money to homeless people, but to use Cambridge Street Aid. Now you'll see the bright yellow contactless pay points that you can use around the city. It starts at £3, you can give more than that, but you can guarantee if you donate to Street Aid, every penny you give will go towards helping a homeless person on their journey from street to home.